Friends, the gospel, the good news of our Lord Jesus Christ. Bless the Lord, my soul, and bless God's holy name. Bless the Lord, my soul, who leads me into life, who leads me into life. Think about a time when you were really scared. Take a moment. For me, it was the first time that I ever went surfing. Or I should say, the first time I ever had surfing lessons. I was absolutely surprised by this. I grew up in Southern California, body surfing, always dreaming of one day trading in my skateboard, which was on the land, for a surfboard, which actually went on the water. But I kind of have a love-hate relationship with water. I had one of those child experiences when you're really young and you get kind of caught in a wave and you get kind of a little bit traumatized. And so it's always kind of kept me a little bit from that. So friends one day called me up and said, hey, do you want to have breakfast? And so I said, sure, I love breakfast. And so we went out. So we started driving toward the beach, and I thought, well, aren't we going to the breakfast place? And I thought, okay, no, we're going to the beach. So I figured we're going to have breakfast on the beach. So we get out of the car with towels, and so I figured we're going to sit on the beach and have breakfast. But there was no food. And so we get out of the car with these towels. We start walking along the beach, and my friend's kind of acting very weird. And so all of a sudden, he's holding these two towels, and he's kind of waving the towels, and all of a sudden the towels kind of part like the Red Sea, and I see emerging from these two towels my board shorts. And I thought to myself, I didn't know my friend had a pair of board shorts just like me. Well, they were my board shorts. Then my friend finally said to me, he goes, well, I am a terrible liar. I can't take this anymore. I got you a surfing lesson, and I was too afraid to tell you, because if I told you, you would back out. And for me, I don't know if you've ever had that experience like where your heart kind of goes a thumpa, 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 thumpa inside your chest, and you're kind of at a loss for words. Well, that was totally me. But I kept thinking to myself, but I'm here, my friend paid for this, show up and keep going forward. Who's ever surfed? Who's ever had a surfing lesson? I guess we're in Arizona. I guess not a lot of people surf here. Okay, all right. Well, it's very interesting. One of the first things that you learn when you surf is you lie flat on the sand. And you learn how to, and you simulate kind of paddling on the sand. That's one of the first things that you learn when you're taking a surfing lesson. Then after you've done that ad nauseum, the next thing you learn how to do is going from paddling like this on your belly to popping up, because that's kind of the key to surfing, because you're supposed to go out beyond certain waves and then wait for the wave to come in, paddle on the board, and then you pop up on the board. So after doing this for half an hour, I was just so tired of it. So he goes, okay, I think I'm ready to give this a try. And so I was kind of excited. Then he goes, now, when you go out into the water, he says, you have to be very careful because jellyfish and stingrays are in the water. And so when you get into the sand, you have to shuffle your feet so that if there's a stingray there, you kind of bump it, hopefully not the stinger, and it'll move. And so I thought, gosh, everything was great until he said stingrays and jellyfish. And so all of a sudden, in my chest again. So we go out, and we're going out over these waves, and you learn to either go over a wave or under a wave. That's another thing that they teach you. And also the surfboard is tethered to your foot. That's another thing that you learn in surfing. And so once we got out kind of to a decent section, you wait for waves, and then you paddle. And you paddle, you paddle, you paddle. And then at some point, you actually will get up on the board after falling down. Sometimes you actually get up on the board. Well, I kept thinking jellyfish, stingrays. That's where I was, and it was keeping me from showing up. Well, finally, he goes, hey, there's really great waves coming. I'm down like this, paddling out. And he goes, just trust me. So he goes, paddle, 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 paddle. And so I paddled, and he goes, pop up. And I popped up. I got on that board, and I was surfing. And I rode that puppy from out all the way in, and it was the most exhilarating feeling ever. Jellyfish and stingrays and everything that I worried about disappeared. And all I wanted to do was go out and out and out again. Fear is useless, people of God. What's needed is trust. And today's readings are all about that. Today's readings are all about what can happen to us when you and I are afraid, but we show up anyway. What did we hear last week? Jesus had just instructed the apostles beautifully about the mustard seed. Something small and insignificant keeps growing and getting larger. And all of a sudden, it's something large and we don't even realize it. And it provides shades and it's truly helpful in our lives. And then right after that great instruction to his disciples and apostles and the crowds, and people are all excited about that, they go into the Sea of Tiberias, and there's a storm. And they get absolutely, positively afraid. Now, of course, that's okay to get afraid, but it says they were terrified. And these were fishermen. Don't you think if you were a fisherman, you would be used to the ocean? The gospel doesn't say that it was a typhoon. It said it was a storm. But they're absolutely, positively terrified. And they cry out to Jesus, and he quiets the storm, and they find that sense of perspective today. So today is where we pick up in the gospel today. And what's going on? He's done another healing thing. More people are following him, wanting his time and attention. And in the midst of all of this, it says a synagogue official comes up and asks for a favor. Everybody was asking for a favor. It was an emergency. Everything was an emergency. But why did Jesus go? My daughter's at the point of death, not just sick, at the point of death. Everything's an emergency. Have you ever had 2 emergencies going on in your life, or 3? How do you do it? Jesus did it by beginning with, yes, I'll go, and then figuring out the details. So oftentimes in our life, we don't do that. We think about all the details, and then what happens? The details weigh us down, and we're not going anywhere. But Jesus starts with yes, and then he figures out the details. So what do we hear? He begins to walk with the synagogue official towards the emergency. And the Gospels say that the crowd's pressing upon him, and they're pulling and everything, and they're asking for it and demanding his attention. And then it says, a woman who has been sick for 12 years with a flow of blood, who has exhausted all of her finances by looking for a cure. Has that ever been us? Physical ailments, psychological ailments. Yeah. Exhausted her funds. Comes up quietly and says, if I can only touch him, his clothes. And why did she say that? Because flow of blood renders some person unclean. And she could render some. So she was alienated too. Not only sick, but alienated. Couldn't come to church. If I can only touch his clothes. And she was sick. Now, if you were sick, would you want to be in a crowd? No, none of us would want to be in a crowd. That takes a lot of faith to show up, to say somehow there's something about this individual, what he's saying, how he's saying it, that makes me feel hope. And I want to try again. I want to show up, and I want to try again. How oftentimes, people of God, do the details weigh us down and we stop trying? And how does that go for us? Not well. But she says, okay, if I can only touch his clothes. And she touches his clothes in the midst of a crowd where everybody's touching him. And it says all of a sudden she's healed. And she feels a sense of well-being in her entire body. She's had this quiet moment, this transformative moment in her body. Now, why didn't Jesus just leave her alone? Why didn't he leave her alone? because he wanted her to feel reinstated to the community. You ever had that experience? People could say, okay, welcome to St. Thomas More Newman Center. But sometimes, where are the bathrooms? Is it okay where I sit? Sometimes we have more questions. And so he speaks and deals with her as a human being. And then it says she tells him the whole story. Now, he's got an emergency, right? 12 years doesn't happen in a minute. So if I was that synagogue official, I would be getting ticked. Then what do we hear? His daughter dies. Can you feel his heart breaking in that? Of course. But does Jesus stop? No. He keeps going. And I love this part. Sometimes in life, people of God, people that we know have troubles and emergencies. And sometimes what do? You probably don't want to talk to anybody. That emergency is too intense for me to deal with, so I don't really want to talk to you. I care about you, but I don't know how to talk to you, so I don't. What Jesus is illustrating here, I love this. How can we still show up even when we are afraid to be there for people? How can we still show up sometimes? Faith, people of God, is not always about answers. It's not. Because sometimes there are absolutely, positively no answers. But faith, people of God, is you and I having the ability to keep showing up. And to keep asking for the strength to know what to do from God. Sometimes faith is just about keeping our mouths shut and to say, isn't it nice? You're probably, I don't know what to say, but you probably would appreciate someone sitting with you. Have you ever just needed someone just to sit with you and not try to solve your problem? But you're afraid to say it? That's faith, people of God, too. It's about showing up. And so when he hears the story that the child has died, he still shows up and he still goes because the family might need help. And he goes, and when he gets to the house, what do we hear? Weeping and commotion. And he says the child's asleep, and then they ridicule him. And I love this line, and he puts them all out. What's great about that line? It's called drama, people of God. You know what drama is? I'm not talking about drama, theatrical drama. I'm talking about drama. We have that in our lives, right? Sometimes we create that in our lives. And sometimes you and I can get entangled in drama. What Jesus is illustrating in this story is sometimes we need to not get entangled in drama. Because if we do, that impedes our ability to show up. And so he keeps going. He walks into that room, walks over to this little girl, so tender. He takes her by the hand and he says, Talitha cum. Little girl, I bid you arise. She comes back. And while everybody's astounded, what is Jesus still doing? Attending to her needs. She's probably hungry. What I think is so beautiful about this story, this gospel reading, is that it's our theme for this year. Fear is useless. What is needed is trust. And I hope throughout this year, you and I have had a chance to be able to look deeply into our lives and to ask that question. What fears in my life are useless? What fears in my life are useful? If we get those mixed up, we're going to have a lot of problems. Useless fears, as I've said many times before, are all about what? Paranoia and control. But we don't solve anything if our whole life is about paranoia and control. And you can have no relationship with God or other people if everything is predicated upon paranoia and control. And so I hope this year we've had some time to be reflective. Would we feel ourselves stuck or depressed or down or angry? To stop and ask that question, is my sense of fear something useful or unuseful? If it is unuseful, more drama comes into our life. If it is useful, we have a road to freedom. So here's the homework for the week. What's working in your life? Useful fear. What's not working in your life? Useless fear. Are you showing up and being proactive about the things that need change? Or are you just thinking about it, worrying about it, building a whole neighborhood about it? If you and I continue to build neighborhoods with useless fear, people don't get served. We don't get healthy. All we do is separate more and more. In the gospel reading today, Jesus kept moving. He kept moving. Through every source of drama, he kept moving. And he was successful. This is Sister Mary V's last weekend here. We're all sad about that. But I have to say, when Sister Mary V first got here 4 years ago, it was very interesting. She was a 4-star general, not in the military, but in Catholic schools. She had been a principal. Excellent. But one of the most difficult things for her, and you can ask her this to corroborate my story, was how do you do campus ministry? What do you do? She was afraid of it. And I said, if you want to know the heart to campus ministry, it's called the ministry of presence. But what do you do? Be present. But what do you do? Be present. And I'm going to ask you, people of God, is it easy to be present? What do you think? People listening to this homily, ha ha ha. Is it easy to be present? No. We have to practice it. But when you and I are truly present, what happens? People feel listened to and loved. If someone says, I love you, but they're looking over your shoulder, do you feel loved? No. If someone wants to say, I care about your concerns, I want to help you to find what your future is all about, but they're not present, do you feel loved? If you're working on some issue in your life, some not in your life, and a person gives you just reading material, but no support, do you feel loved? That's called being present. That's called showing up. And that's what Jesus did in this gospel. He showed up. And what was so beautiful to watch Sister Mary V over these 4 years was to watch her surf the waves of the difficulty of saying, okay, well, do I know how to talk to students? Well, you know how to talk? Say hello. I talk to people sometimes, Father, I want to meet somebody. And I go, well, do you know, well, have you said hello? Well, no. Well, how are you going to meet somebody? Because they may say hello to you first. What are you going to say? We have to be present. We have to show up. And what was so beautiful watching Sister Mary V over these 4 years was to watch her show up. And to stop, like all of us can do sometimes, obsessing on getting it perfect. That's a useless fear. When we obsess on getting things perfect, we're not present. And we say dumb things, all of us do. Have you ever said a dumb thing? And then go, oh my God, I didn't mean that. Then we say another dumb thing. Fear is useless. Unhealthy fear is useless. But healthy fear helps us to be able to say, I'm afraid, I'm excited, I want to go surfing. But I can't surf if my tush is on the beach. You have to do the work, people of God. And today's reading is all about doing the work. And that's faith too. Faith is not just about information. Faith is about relationship. The information is what pushes us out the door, but hopefully to empower us in the relationship. We have to let go. And again, that was the beautiful thing of watching Sister Mary V over these 4 years. She let go and let go and let go. And then what did she discover? I'm pretty good at this. And this community was deeply served. And if you ask her, she says that she was deeply served too. So if you remember nothing else about the homily today, show up. And your homework this week is, how are you not? Emotionally, physically, intellectually, spiritually, how are you not? That's not about guilt. It's about opportunity. In life, we can make so many excuses. Let's stop making excuses. Let's save that energy to make our request to God, to give us the courage to keep stepping, to keep believing. The homework, start on the beach with your paddling. What holds me back? What holds me back? And then once you have a healthy list, pop up and ask God for support. Jesus said clearly in that gospel reading what? When he was stopped at the door of the house with the drama, you can't come in, it's over, nothing can happen. What did he say? Fear is useless. Let us open our ears and our hearts and our hands and take his. Because then we can truly hear Talitha